you have weeds in your garden, and one of the problems that we used to have was we raised everything on raised rows. It's a raised bed configuration that's done row by row with the tractor. So when you set up your cultivator, you can't just set it up for flat ground. You've got to set it up in a special way so that you can get all the weeds. Let me show you how we do it. First thing you do is get you a proper tool. Now, when you ask your children who are grown to get you a big crescent wrench, sometimes you might want to be specific. This thing probably weighs 5 pounds, and it's big, it does the job, but wow, it's heavy. For those of you that have watched some of my other videos, yes, this is the same toolbar we use for our row builder. These things come right off. Because you want your cultivator tines to be down in the dirt at the same height, you need to use your trusty tape measure and measure down how far you want to go. We generally start the middle tines, the ones closest to the plant, at about 1 foot. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to loosen these bolts, which I've done beforehand, and then we're going to take our tape measure. We're going to measure down about 12 inches and mark it. By marking it, when you go to move the cultivator tines, you're not fighting the tape measure and the tine, which is liable to fall out on the bottom, and if you have your feet in the wrong place, is going to be relatively painful. So let's measure that off. Now, by downsizing our crescent wrench, our adjustable wrench, it'll make this a whole lot easier, and we will have the tines at the exact same height, which is what we need to do the proper weeding. So let's get this done. I'm gonna move this down so the top of my mark is right at the toolbar. Then I'm gonna snug it up. Going to do the same thing right here. I see my mark, and so I bring it down to where it's approximately where my mark is. Middle tines are good to go. So what we're going to do now is we're going to put the outside tines on. We're going to go ahead and install them and make our mark, so we can adjust them here in a minute after we get them both on. Now remember, cultivator tines can be very sharp. That's the idea, is they cut into the earth to cut weeds out. So you've got to be really careful when you're dealing with these. They're not only heavy and sharp, so it's kind of a safety hazard, so be very careful. Going to snug this up for right now. Then we're going to come down. The last one was 12 inches. This one we're going to do at about 10.5. We're actually pretty close right here to start with. Making our mark. So let's do the same over here. Gonna snug them up and measure. Again, 10.5 inches for the outside tine. Now, if you've got 3 sets of tines, you'll have to adjust your measurements accordingly. So, let's go back over here, find our mark, and adjust it. Same over here. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to tighten these up, and we're going to take them up and see how they fall on the raised beds. Now, raised rows can vary from year to year. When you build them, there can be moisture or other things that cause the row to be bigger or shorter. So you may have to adjust once you get up there, and we'll take a look once we get there. Back to the monster crescent room. We don't want them coming off up there. Be careful not to make them too tight. Hence, if you see the different types of bolts on here, if you can see that well, yeah, I got them too tight. Now we've got our preliminary adjustments done. Let's go up to the fall garden and see if we need to do any adjustments. Preheat. Kubotas all need to be preheated even when it's warm out. It's about 70 out here today. Okay, we're up in the fall garden. This is one of our turnip green rows, and you can see that the cultivator is set right down the center. And the idea is to leave the plateau, or basically the top of the row, as you look right here, pretty much intact. With that said, we also want the sides to be cultivated so the weeds don't grow up and smother our crops. Now, this is not precise cultivating because we don't care really how many weeds we have. This is more for aesthetics. Remember, this is the fall garden. The fall garden is going to get cold out here, and many of these summer weeds, if not all of them, will eventually die off, and you'll have exactly what you need to be, but you certainly don't want a weedy mess out here either. Let's talk about Cultivator 101. Basically what you do is you bring your tractor out in your garden over these raised rows. You center your cultivator, and then you look down the center of your tractor to where exactly it's pointed at. And you find a landmark, some sort of part of a house or a tree or a weed or something. And you drive exactly towards that landmark. If you do that, your rows will be straight. If you deviate from that, there's no telling what you're going to tear up, including exactly what you're trying to grow. One other thing, cultivation is not a speed, it's not a race. You need to go slow and pay attention to what you're doing. If things go awry and you happen to get off, stop, back up, and do it again. It's not a big deal. I don't know if you can hear this or not, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to lower these tines just so they contact the ground, just barely. That's exactly the right cultivation time. So hey, it's not perfect, but wow, looks a lot better. Preferred tractor gear is low, 1 or 2, depending on how comfortable you are, in 2-wheel drive, assuming that your soil is dry. Hope you enjoyed the video. Stay safe, and until next time, see you down at the barn.